David Costa, Stephanie Housh, Jennifer Regola here, Steve Sebastian
Here.
Michelle Shaw here, Josie Shattuck here, quorum present. Pledge of Allegiance. Boy Scouts. Scouts, we're not always. No.
Philip, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, we're done.
Thank you. Oh, we have cookies. Please do take one. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, may I have a motion to open the 2023-2024 budget hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Is this where you want to
Roll call. Josie Shattuck?
Yes.
Gwen Violet?
Yes.
Stephanie Housh?
Yes.
Jennifer Regola?
Yes.
Steve Sebastian?
Yes.
Michelle Shaw? Here. Motion carried. As a corporate entity charged by the law with governing the school district, the Board of Education sits in trust for the entire community. Aligning with the board's goals, this budget is mindful of education excellence for all students while being mindful of maintaining good financial stability. Tonight, September 19, 2023, is a date set for the hearing on the school budget for the school year ending in June 30th, 2024. The tentative budget has been available for public inspection as required by law, and notice of said public hearing was published on August 1st, 2023, as required by law. With that said, Dr. Bute will report on the budget being proposed for adoption this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. We did have some material changes from when I presented the budget earlier this fiscal year. I'll direct your attention to my presentation, the slide deck. Starting with page 5, shows the operation, the budgetary funds for the 23-24 year. And obviously the big change there will be in Fund 60, capital projects. Earlier last week, we closed on our bonds, the alternate revenue bonds round 2. It was a little over $13 million, which is why the revenue in Fund 60 is larger than it was prior to tonight's meeting. Expenditures are also estimated to be about $6.8 million. And it does show a profit in that category of $6.5 million. As you know, that's not necessarily a profit. Our construction project next summer, which I know Whiteham is going to talk about here later on tonight, goes over 2 fiscal years. So we estimated how much money we thought we would spend prior to June 30th of 24, and then with the majority of that then coming in July, August, and September of 24, which would be next fiscal year. So next fiscal year, you'll see a huge loss in Fund 60 because there won't be any more the second time now in the last 3 years that we've done a bond issue for construction projects. If you look at page 6, you'll see the historical revenues by fund, and you'll see that we did that in 21-22. That was an $11 million bond, $10 million of change. And the expenditures for that have been played out over 3 fiscal years now, 21-22, 22-23, and now into 23-24. And I suspect that this most recent bond issue will play out in a similar fashion over 2 to 3 fiscal years. Page 8 shows you the variances from July the 1st. Evidence-based funding revenue from the state was up $654. The alternate revenue bonds, $13.1 million. And the phase 2 construction is estimated to be $4 million prior to June 30th. You're looking at fund policy 420, which is your fund balance policy. Obviously, we have an influx of capital during this fiscal year, which makes the forecasted days of cash on hand larger than normal. It is 495 days estimated. I said estimated. We do not have yet the audited bucks from June 30th returned from the auditors yet, so that number may change based on how the audit came out. Questions so far?
Sorry, back on slide 4, when you were
Yes.
talking, the debt services, I'm assuming is from the bonds that we issued a couple years ago.
Correct.
But we were gonna pay for those through evidence-based funding?
Correct.
And what line item is that?
The evidence-based funding comes into the education fund 10, and then we pass a resolution during the year to transfer that money from 10 to 30 to pay the debt service.
Thank you.
Other questions? The last item, a couple years ago, the legislature passed the legislation, Public Act 102-1102, requiring school districts to disclose their cash reserve balances. So the last page shows you our estimated cash balances as of June 30th, 2023, which is the end of last fiscal year. You can see we have 4 areas that are considered unrestricted funds. That's education, operation, transportation, and working cash. Each of those had a positive fund balance. We have fund balances in 30, 50, 60, 80, 90, and student activity. Those are restricted funds, by restricted. That means you can only spend money in certain areas out of those accounts. And the law also requires us to disclose what obligations we have secured using those funds. Obviously, we had the 21 general obligation alternate revenue bonds of $10.1 million. Also a bus lease of $250,000, the copier lease, and facilities lease for the modulars for the transportation. Those are the items that are secured using those fund balances. We'll update that again when we do the levy in November, December. That's also one of the requirements. So when you're talking about your budget, talking about your levy, disclose fund balances, we'll have updated what our balance is in November when that point in time comes in our season. Other questions?
So you stripped out the bonds and the projects from this, just looking at all the other funds.
Yes.
You'd be $700,000 negative, roughly.
Correct.
Because we're almost using the bonds slightly to balance out the negative.
That is
I understand it's a
yes,
budget.
correct.
I understand
Yes, we were,
it's a budget.
the original proposal was a negative budget. That's correct.
And at what point of the year do we ever go through at the end of the year and review the actuals? Right, because this is just a budget, so it's an estimate of what the year
Correct.
what we're going to spend throughout the year.
That's correct.
But at the end of the fiscal, do we ever look at the same format and say, here's your actuals plugged in?
We do that literally every month in the district office. We balance our books every month. We look at where we are year to date, what our projections were at that point in time, and compare to the revenues and to the expenditure, how they're tracking. And then we take a hard look at that in March, which is getting toward the end of our last quarter of the fiscal year, and we start making the plans for the following year.
Because even though we're going to be okay this year because of the bonds, and we'll be okay next year because of the bonds, we don't want to be like headed down this road of overextending. And I know that the debt servicing is also optional, and that you can always use that for dollars if we had to. We wouldn't have to abate that piece at the end of the year, right?
You'll have to, we promised our community that we would.
No, but I'm saying, we don't want to, I'm just projecting thinking about this 3 years out with those line items, let's just say they're out of the equation. The bonds are spent, the projects are done, and now we're just looking at all the other funds. Are we digging ourselves into a hole that we didn't see coming 2 years prior because we were using the bonds to balance out the budget?
Now, if you recall, in July, when we had this presentation, we talked about the impacts on this year's budget over last year, which was an additional 7 staff members that came on board this year. And that is a significant increase year over year. That's of course, our student population has been growing year over year now for the last couple of years. We added more staff, which caused a negative this year. I do expect that to even back out in the future years. I don't look at it as that we're using the bonds to balance the books. I mean, I know it looks that way. I get that.
Yeah.
But when we do make our budget projections from year over year, we do overestimate expenditures and underestimate revenues to be on the conservative side. So we are expecting a balanced budget. When you strip out the bonds, strip out the construction, we'll be close to a break-even budget year over year.
And I still don't, so the form that we're gonna vote on at the bottom of the agenda, or that we file with the county, right, matches these numbers. How does that relate to the amounts that we levy? Because when we levy dollars, they get ballooned because they're estimating the cost of property tax increase.
Yes.
How does that form relate to the amount that we levy to the county?
The county revenues are lower than that.
Because that's an estimate, where this is actual, and we're gonna file it and say, this is the dollar amounts we want in each of the funds.
Those are our revenues that we're gonna have. That doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna come from taxes. That's all revenues.
I still just, after all these years of being on sport, I still don't understand the detail behind.
Yeah, so when we estimated and ballooned our levy for the taxes in November, and the county comes back when they finalize property values, and they make those final calculations, they give us a final number. It's always never the same amount that we asked for on the levy. It's always less.
Which is about a little bit.
Correct. Yeah. Make sure we capture all available revenue. Correct.
And how does that number relate to the budget that we're looking at? How does the number that we're levying relate to our budget?
The levy is contained within those budgetary numbers, but there are other revenues that are in each of those funds that are listed there that I didn't break out. I mean, they're broken out in you look at the full 2024 levy of the budget that's listed in there in Excel. That breaks all the figures down from different areas, and you'll see that the tax revenue from the county is lower than each one of those amounts that we have on that sheet. Is that what you're saying? How does it?
So there's other things like the federal.
Of course, there's always other revenues
state,
that go into those areas, yes.
So this is more than what the levy amount would be, because these include other
Correct.
revenues.
It includes all forms of revenue, not just taxes from the county.
I guess it's odd because we're gonna have this discussion in a couple months about a levy.
Yes.
And I feel like this is all the same conversation. It
It
all
is
comes
similar
down
conversation.
to how much the district needs to operate
Yes,
versus how much we file with the county and how much, right?
yes.
How much,
It is circular conversation.
but it comes at different times, and I feel like
Yes.
we never connect them. We're always just like go through this motion and okay.
I think it's always hard to
alone, I just,
piece the, when you're going month to month, like if it was more often, technically there were meetings so that you could kind of bring it back to, circle it back. Maybe that's part of it, so we're doing this now and then we're, later, and so it's just, I think, hard to remember all the process for all of it.
maybe I don't need to know because I'm not an accountant, but at the Henry County clerk, I just.
So how about this? And when they come back and do the levy in November, I'll add more detail to it and show that comparison from the levy compared to our budget and where the numbers break down.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Any other board member questions? Okay, are there any comments from the audience? Seeing none, may I have a motion to close the 2023-24 budget period? All in favor, say, oh, motion first.
Second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Administrative reports, Dr. Yu.
Yes, obviously we are back fully now in session in September. All admin is reports are in the back. Other questions for any of the workers on any of the reports, either mine or any from the building? Is there anything that you want to highlight tonight, Martha, Nicole?
We just want to thank all of our students and parents and the PTO for helping to put together and celebrate our back to school events last week. They were very well attended. Our book fair did very well as well. I think we brought in just north of
$16,000, yeah. It's
So-
unprecedented.
Record-setting book fair, I believe.
Record-setting book fair, yeah.
What changed?
I think we had it open during, school-wide events where families were invited to come in. Normally, we just have it during the school day and maybe a few hours in the evening where people can stop in, but people were coming for back to school night, and I think they just, one of their stops was the book fair.
I think having 2 back to school nights probably helped too, like the two
Sure.
that there, you know, 'cause I know like I worked Wednesday morning and Amanda was telling me like, even the junior high side, that was busy too,
Sure.
where normally it's not the busiest of times, so, yeah.
No, that was probably due to parking, knowing that we couldn't accommodate everybody in the
For
front.
sure.
Yeah.
Parking is always a problem.
No question, just a comment. I noticed that there were over 30 rave reviews. I don't know that I've seen that many, which I think just speaks to the enthusiasm for the beginning of the year. So it's really great to see.
The junior
We
high.
started something a little different on the junior high this year. We opened it up for students to give rave reviews to their teachers. And so there's a section for which parents or community members gave rave reviews, and then rave reviews from students to their teachers.
I had a question, on the website, the curriculum and instruction area, I was wondering, when will that come to completion, or what's the game plan of making sure all the different grades and areas will be?
It's a great question. I don't know if we have a definitive timeline. Things are always being updated, you know, as we review things or make any transitions. Big one was bringing fifth grade over to junior high last year. It was a point of discussion last week with our curriculum coaches as to getting as many documents as we can updated throughout the school year. So we can get a more definitive timeline as the school year progresses.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, thank you.
Another question, and Martha, I like direct to you, with the new ELA curriculum, I'm assuming parents will be kind of informed when that will start up and stuff like that?
Yeah, if we're still in the field testing stage, we haven't even started that yet. If we do have an adoption, which we likely will, it won't be until next year.
Oh, okay,
And yes, parents will be well informed.
Okay.
This year's only gonna be a pilot.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Anything else?
Congrats on your 10 years.
yeah,
Thank you.
it was fun to see that too, posted up in the
In
hallway.
front hall, yeah.
Yeah,
Any questions?
And then, are you going to your schools with instructions?
Yes, I'm ready for that now. Okay. So we invited members from White and Company. We have 3 tonight, Wendy, Jennifer, and George here, and they've given us, going to give us an update on our 24 design progress. George?
Thank you very much, Dr. Beard. It's good to be with you tonight. But as John mentioned, my name is George Gauthier. I'm with White and Company, and we're here with Jennifer Slasky, who's in architecture, and Wendy Watts, who is one of our K-12 design architecture and interior leaders. We're here to, all 3 of us are going to take a portion of this presentation that we provided for the board. If you'd like to follow along, go ahead and pull that up. Right now, we're starting on just the cover sheet. I think there's about 18 slides. Each one of us will take a few, I'll start with a few slides and then we'll let Jim talk about architecture a little bit more in detail. And then we'll have one detail about the interior and the concept behind the interiors. So with that, I'd like to just move over to slide number 3. We'll show you an overall site plan. We have this larger site plan, and then we'll focus in on the next slide. But just wanted to give you the lay of the land here. The red volume is our proposed next phase of building addition. We also have some other items on site, which include a detention unit at the north end and a bus drive and drop-off line just east. We also have a dashed area in that will eventually connect as a future phase to this building addition. If we move on to the next one, that would be slide number 4. This should give you just a little bit better view of that. Sometimes it's hard to see. What's not shown here are the interior renovation pieces. We'll get to that. We do have an early childhood playground shown in the existing location as well as potentially in the future courtyard location, which is just north of the red building addition volume. Just a quick word about the program. On this slide, on slide number 5, we have the addition outlined in blue, and then we have 2 areas of renovation that are outlined in red. Okay. 2 areas of renovation are focusing on the early childhood, pre-K and kindergarten classrooms. The addition is focusing on 3rd and 4th grade and associated support spaces. The program, as you can see on this whole list here, is driven by obtaining 5 sections per grade. The next slide will give you a little bit more detail on how big these components are. The blue outline is just under 12,000 square feet. That's the building addition. We're going to have Jen talk about that in greater detail, as well as the renovation areas. One quick note is, as we move further into our documents, we're about halfway through our construction documents at this time. We have talked with Dr. Beaver and the district about cost control measures such as alternate bids and things to give the board the most flexibility. So we have talked about perhaps those two renovation areas being their own alternate bid options, as well as the outdoor classroom that is associated with the addition that you'll see later in this presentation. That could potentially also be another alternate bid where if you don't want to do a steel trellis, you don't have to do that. Those kinds of things are what we're thinking about as we move further along the way in this process. I'd like to give it to Jen to talk a little bit.
In the further slides, we'll show blow-ups of the addition to just kind of walk you through it, and then also the PK renovation. I just want to point out here specifically the kindergarten, which is our lightest area of renovation. The one area we are changing up a couple of walls just to change from a 4 classroom space to 3, which will give you 6 overall kindergarten that are just all closer in size to each other, and then modernizing and updating those classrooms. So moving on to slide 7, this is the addition. And what we did here is we're having 8 additional classrooms that will house 4th and 3rd grade. We did take an approach similar to the previous edition that we did, but focus more on those actual teaching spaces. Similarly, getting lockers in, but also having visibility with windows above those. We have an additional small group room, which also has visibility above those lockers there, and then a special ed resource room. We'll also see at the north there, that like white square is what we're proposing as a concrete patio, the outdoor teaching space with that additional or optional trellis, as we were talking about, that could be a bid option, that doesn't have to be included. However, the concrete connects that library door to the north there, along with the additional exit, and that concrete is required for exiting purposes.
Jennifer, what is the, this was a 11,000 square foot approximately, how's that compared to the fifth grade edition? Bigger, smaller, not the
It
same?
is bigger,
A little bit bigger?
yeah, a little bit bigger. And then this is the preschool renovation area, so this is the heavier of the two renovations. This spot, particularly in this school, does have a lot of structure stuff going on, so what we're doing as cost measures here is where we are moving walls around, we're not affecting any of your existing structure, to kind of save on costs there, but we are making the 3 preschool rooms larger. They're about 1,200 square foot. And then we're also adding a toilet in each room, a large closet and storage space for the teacher. There'll also be inside storage space for the students, and kind of a built-in teacher storage space as well to provide that. We're also going to have an additional special ed resource room in that area, and a gross motor skills room.
How many classrooms does that red box take out? The 9,000 square foot renovation that turns into 3
Oh.
pre-K rooms and a gross motor room.
Yes.
How many current classrooms does that
So that is,
eliminate?
it's changing from 5 classrooms to 4, so the 3 PK and gross. Because there are some smaller, like half, like classroom sizes in there. And actually on page 5 is kind of where we show the reassignment of all those spaces throughout the school.
I know, but we want to add classrooms. And it's hard to tell, like, obviously, I see that we're adding kindergarten because the pre-K is moving over. So.
When you look at the red areas.
I'm just trying to figure out the overall net of classrooms.
You are losing 2 in the red and adding 8, 9 from the blue. So there's 8 full size and a half size classroom.
Yeah.
And does the 3rd and 4th graders, do they use small group rooms, outdoor patio space, and then I see the area in between the addition and the old building, looks like it's gonna be like an open space, probably with furniture and stuff. Do they use that? Does that grade level use that outer classroom space?
They currently don't have that space available to them to use.
But is that space that would be getting used? Because I mean, you could move some stuff around and squeeze this together a little bit.
Well,
For like, does the 5th graders use all that? They do?
Yeah, there's students accessing even the outdoor classroom.
All the lounge space they got over there, it's all, I don't know what, I don't know what the curriculum drives. So I'm just thinking in elementary, you're still in a single classroom for the majority of the day. They do use all that.
Yeah, even when I was in classrooms yesterday, students were sitting in collaborative spaces with 5 areas.
Also, that portion by the outdoor, we did add additional locker space there, which we did need to get the counts. Just based on the design that we did for efficiency, trying to get the quarter space down, the quarter to classroom ratio, kind of get that efficiency in construction. We did add some lockers there to meet the counts. So I know it looks like a big space, but we do need a larger egress door there as well, since it's serving now some of what it's connecting to, so that egress space does need to be a little bit bigger there.
Okay. Because you see what I'm getting at, you could almost put another classroom right there.
Yes, yeah, but like I said, we're trying to fit in the locker count, but not have too expansive of a quarter, just to save on our construction footprint. If that makes sense in terms of efficiency.
one of the downsides of putting the classroom in where that white space classroom that will still be used as a classroom. We've been trying to avoid those situations if at all possible, to make sure every classroom has some kind of natural
That's
light.
I think that's a
Standard
science
school now.
classroom, yeah, I think that's a science classroom right now. Were there any other questions on the addition portion here on page 7?
So we're losing in red, in the PK section, we're losing one PK classroom, but the remaining 3 are they're going to be larger essentially.
Yes.
And in terms of head count, what's the expected size? Like is it, can you add 5 kids to each class, 10 kids to each class? What's
There's
the,
usually a limit for pre-K, there's a limit of like 20 per classroom.
right, yeah, what is it?
Well, and it depends on the kind of classroom, but yes, we have state limits, so 20 per classroom in blended classrooms and 10 per class in self-contained. But in self-contained classrooms, we have a lot more adults and students supporting.
Okay.
And the learning areas that are set up within the classrooms, and it's a little bit different now than it has been in the past, take up a lot more space than, a traditional classroom. So our smaller classrooms are a challenge to program appropriately for our students. We obviously have one classroom without a bathroom currently, so that's posed a myriad of challenges this year, taking the group, and it's our kids with more significant needs to another location to use the bathroom together, requiring staff both with them in the bathroom, staff in the classroom, and it completely interrupts the instructional day. So those are some things to consider.
So it sounds like the accommodations and the setup within the classrooms will be much more, beneficial to kids, but it doesn't necessarily increase the head count because there's restrictions
Increase
there.
the head count, we're bound to those,
Sure,
capacities.
okay, thank you.
Can you explain a little bit more about the gross motor area?
Yes, I can, so right now, we have nowhere for our preschoolers to go for gross motor. So once the weather shifts and we can no longer take them out on the playground, we don't have any area except the classroom for them to do gross motor. We are currently using part of the makerspace for that. It's not particularly designed for that, so gross motor for preschoolers is typically our physical therapist and our occupational therapist working with the team and set up obstacle courses and different types of activities for the kiddos to join in intentional targeted gross motor movement. In the past, when we had a larger space, there might be games, scooter activities, animal walks, things like that. Right now, we are using a pretty small space for those kids, which isn't always the safest either. And can be a challenge, especially for our kiddos that have a hard time with noisier, more active environments, because it causes an emotional response at times if they have sensory needs, which is fairly typical. So right now, we're really at a deficit. There isn't any space within the school during the school day for them to get into like we used to, into like the gym or the multi-purpose room to do those larger gross motor activities. So, and right now they're walking from where the early childhood classrooms are down to the maker space with them in order to get some of that gross motor activity in. Sometimes they just opt for the hallway, sometimes they do things in the classroom, but it's not, we're not able to, I guess, fully implement what would be ideal for them, if that makes sense, due to space issues, really. So, we do alternatives. We use Go Noodle, we do movement in the classroom, we do some obstacle courses in the hallway, and we use that makerspace room when we can. Sometimes it doesn't work as well for our preschoolers. And I think the other thing to note on that is also for our older students, our PT and our OTs have changed location after location after location over the course of the 7 years that I've been here. A lot of them have not been ideal spaces. We make do with what we have. We understand they're a related service. They're not, the priority for all of our learners. The children who do need those services really deserve to have an adequate space to have them. And, again, oftentimes that's the hallway or a space that wasn't designed for this, but is being utilized for it. So we used to use the open area in the suites, but we also had all kinds of storage in there for their equipment. So it's a continual struggle to identify a place that they can appropriately serve those children and meet their needs with regard to building those gross motor skills, and occupational skills.
Just a note on just general school design, these kinds of spaces dedicated to this kind of activity, sensory, gross motor, are much more mainstream than today's school design. So they're very common.
So that area would not be specifically dedicated to preschool, but if we have it adjacent to them for those gross motor skills for the whole class, it makes a lot of sense. Our other kids then access throughout the day when not being utilized by those classes. And that is an ongoing need that has increased dramatically during the time that I've worked in special education.
And just to clarify, by other kids utilizing the space, you are referencing all elementary children with IEPs that have gross motor.
Correct, and at times, junior high students when we. Right. So right now, on the junior high, trying to give some of that movement, we have exercise bikes and a treadmill in the social worker's office, which is not ideal because you don't want kids walking in and out while other kids are being supported in there. But we're trying, to get them what they need in space that's appropriate and private, without having them walk all the way across the school. So it's, there are challenges, we're making it work, but it could be better.
It's impressive what you're able to do with what you have, but this dedicated space would be wonderful.
Are there any other questions about either the renovation or addition areas?
So can you just kind of briefly summarize or outline what the physical changes will be to the kindergarten classrooms?
Yes. The physical changes in the two that are at the east, the right side there, and the one that are at the left is purely going to be interior type renovation, so flooring, lighting, any acoustics that might be needed, and then an update to all the teaching surfaces, storage, and that kind of stuff. And then the three that are kind of grouped together on the north there are currently 4 classrooms. So we'll be demoing 3 walls that are shown in those really tiny dashed lines, and making it into 3. So the goal, and they will have the same interior updates and modernization, and then that way all 6 of the classrooms are closer to an equal size of each other.
Okay. Thank you. And then just to clarify, Dr. Butte, both the red portion and the blue portion, those have been accounted for in the alternate revenue bonds? Or were we just talking about the new 8 classrooms in the new section? I can't remember.
Our intent is to do as much of all the blue.
Yeah.
And as much as the red as possible. I don't believe we're gonna be able to, this is extensive renovation. I would love for the bids to come in, for us to be able to do it all. I'm not confident that they will be, which is why we asked ICI, when we're putting this out for bid, to give us options and choices so we can make the best value choice possible for our money.
Right. So this, what we're looking at, would be essentially all the bells and whistles. Everything is accounted for in,
Correct.
in what we're hoping to get.
What we'd like to get, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. Knowing going into it that it's not gonna happen, not all of
Right.
it. I would love for it to. Maybe the contractors will have much love for Prairie Grove and give them some great numbers, but
And so we're losing 1 kindergarten room because those walls are being knocked down and these formerly 4 now being
the
turned
floors
into
went down to 3, correct. And 1
But we're
in the
adding-
pre-K area, and we're
okay.
adding 8 other full size.
Okay, so
So
we're
it's
adding one in.
it's a gain of 6 overall full-size classrooms.
Okay.
So we're gonna have 3 pre-K, 5 kindergarten,
5 for
5
everything.
first,
everything.
5 second.
We currently have 5 of everything except 4th grade, Martha.
Correct.
Slide number 5 has the classroom count.
We currently have 5 sections
Classes,
of everything,
it's not
K
class
through 3rd grade. 4th grade has 4 sections, next year it'll have 5. We currently have 3 sections of preschool on the childhood.
Wait, why does it say 6 kindergarten?
So
Because
what are
we have a flex room in there for kindergarten in case we don't know what the numbers are gonna be coming in, we have an extra space, if need be,
Maybe you use it for whatever.
for what we need it to do.
what are we gaining then, back to your comment? No, you said we currently have 5 of everything now.
Yeah, but we're gaining the space to actually utilize.
2 classes are in the library right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know some of the other stuff's on the card, is it?
Yeah, I mean, like, library, we have three teachers utilizing the library currently, just, you know, why we're here tonight, not in our library spot. This gives them spaces back, it frees up other areas that we currently have people tucked into, because that's the space that we have.
So we're still gonna have the trailer discussion like 2-3 years from now.
If our population continues to grow at the current clip, that's possible. I mean, Woodlore's gonna build 47 more townhouses, 3 bedrooms apiece, that's gonna be another 40, 50 kids easy, in the next 3 years, so, yeah. Good problem to have, I guess.
Wait, we have 6 kindergarten, but then you those are smaller class sizes and then
We currently have 5 kindergartens, and the numbers of kindergarten sections varies year to year. So we have, in this design, we've asked them to go one above. So we have room for a 6th, and it will sort of be our catch-all. If we have an enrollment in a certain, like right now, we have 105 second graders. Okay, so if we get a bubble group, we have flexibility to move somebody in and out of the 6th section.
you can use it for any grade.
Correct.
That's what he said.
This design just shows you that it's designed for kindergarten, but you can use it for anything. Correct.
There are no more questions about the general layout. We can move on and Wendy can go over the interior approach with you guys.
Okay, all right, so let's move to slide 10. So I think it's important to give you a glimpse into the overall facility that we've been thinking about in terms of a color and material approach before digging into next summer's projects. And what we have on our slide here is an approach that we developed a couple of years ago when the 5th grade edition was being designed. And that was to take all of the great work that had been done renovating your library, which is beautiful, in your family consumer science area in the junior high, and take that color palette and really extend it throughout the whole building and use it so that different areas and grade levels would have a color identity, basically. And that's what we did in the 5th grade edition, which takes the green tone from the combination of colors, and that's kind of their primary accent, and that was leveraged through paints, floor finishes, as well as the furnishings, but it does mix in all the other tones, and we'll take that same approach as we move to the 3rd and 4th grade, pre-K, and kindergarten. It will still be a mix of colors, but a primary dominant accent color as a means of wayfinding. Okay, so jumping to the next slide, slide 11, taking a glimpse at the 3rd and 4th grade. This is where we bring in the blue and teal accent colors. We're giving you a taste of what a classroom looks like, which builds on the great leverage of the 5th grade classrooms, the combination of 2 products for the flooring, random bringing in a few different tones of the paint colors. And as Jen had mentioned, that really great casework element piece that gives the teachers a primary teaching surface as well as abundant storage in a location that serves them well. And moving on to the next slide, the pre-K and kindergarten palettes. What's being done here is having a primarily hard floor surface, which is appropriate for those age levels. but then building in a floor area with the soft carpets, as so many of the activities at those younger grades happens on the floor, and making that adjacent to that primary teaching wall area, that again provides tons of great storage, but really shapes some of those zones for the classroom at that grade level, which is all about the activity centers and zones. And these views are nice because it also just tells you a little bit more about the space. As Jen was mentioning, the pre-K rooms having the toilet rooms associated inside those classrooms, as well as the students' individual cubby storage. That will not be out in the hallway, it will now be inside the classroom, which is appropriate at that grade level. Any questions about that?
I was just wondering, do we have feedback on like this casework from the current?
Fifth grade edition, yeah.
Yeah, like how is it, do they use it, do they like it, is it?
Got some issues with the sliding of the driveway stores, but they've come up and fixed that, so. Otherwise, yes, they utilize the space.
Do they like that setup versus what they used to have, or is it more?
I have a few new staff members in there, so I'm not quite sure I could compare it to what they used to have. I haven't asked that specific question, but I would assume that they're enjoying it better than the previous setup.
It'd be nice just to make sure we get that feedback to see, like, if we're spending on that and investing in putting it as like, this is status quo, that if there is any issues, or it's like, yeah, we'd rather have this than this, that we incorporate that feedback.
Sure.
Can I go back a couple slides, sorry.
Sure.
Is the square foot, is the size of the restrooms correlated to the square footage of the classrooms and the capacity of them?
Which slide are you on?
I'm just looking, I'm sorry, I'm looking back at the general layout, just like on slide 7.
Or like slide 7, yeah,
The same way you were talking about the lockers having a certain number count.
Yeah,
Is
the
the restroom to serve so many classrooms?
yes, yeah, the toilet counts are code, and it's based on occupancy of classrooms, and we make sure that that's accounted for, yeah.
So if the addition ever were to get even longer, you have to then keep adding additional restroom facilities. Is this at that capacity, or is there still capacity there?
I'd have to check, but it probably, I think the way that we had been planning, if there is an additional addition, it'd be another kind of wing like this, which would require the additional restroom versus like just one more classroom, type thing, so.
So, are you asking if we added 2 classrooms to the end, would you have that additional toilet
I'm
space?
just-
Is that the question?
I understand that we're right sizing many of the classrooms and that, right? I just, obviously that's nothing that we know the answer to, but we're always looking for additional classrooms, and I'm just wondering if instead of renovating and right sizing the classrooms, is the dollars better spent just adding classrooms? Keeping the renovation, let's just say you didn't do any of the renovation, but now we added 10 classrooms or 12 classrooms. Is that money better spent versus right sizing the other ones?
I will say, further to the east of this, the grade does get pretty steep, and that does add a decent amount of dollars to construction and new construction projects, because we would be having to fix that grade more the further east you went.
I also remember conversations about investing in the original building versus divesting of it. So I believe that's kind of where this is going. Am I correct?
Correct, you are correct.
Just one thought was the correlation, nothing discussion in one.
The north wing.
And north wing,
The kindergarten wing, correct.
So I believe that, to me, this is correcting that, following that.
I agree. You know where I'm going. We've talked trailers like twice, so I'm just, don't want to do it again.
I do.
It won't be next year, it'll be the year that.
Yeah, no one wants to spend money on a Band-Aid, essentially, right? So, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
But I think the intent here was to take the current facility that we have and make it the best that we think it should be. And renovate the spaces that need renovating, we're gonna still use them and renovate them rather than continue to build new and just ignore them.
Well, isn't the cost like another thing too with that? Like if we totally took that north wing out instead of, was that part of it?
You know, you take the north wing out, you still have to fix
Fix
the
the
outside
outside,
wall,
yeah.
absolutely, because you're
Yeah.
gonna leave a, giant gap, you have to do something, you're gonna spend money no matter what.
Yeah.
So I believe the last conversation we had on this a year or so ago was to just keep it, restore it, and make it as functional and make it an inviting, warm place, to the expectation that our community expects it to be, so that's what we're proposing.
I'd be interested to see like what renovating that wing, changing the classrooms and demoing those walls, what structurally that costs, because I don't think that's an easy task up there.
It's not, that's why it's gonna be expensive, heavy renovation is always expensive.
Yeah.
There's always unknowns behind the walls, as soon as you open it up.
No, but I'm just saying it's an old building and even the way these buildings are supported, it's like you can't just move a wall 10 feet
Without some serious support.
It's like, is all that, or
We,
is all that really?
You're accounting for
we
that.
are counting for the existing structural drawings that we have, so we are avoiding the north-south walls that we have joists currently bearing on. Again, there could be some surprises, but from what we have in our information, we are avoiding demoing those bearing walls.
If that far north building's got those old, like, I don't even know what they're called, so they're from like the 50s and 60s.
It actually has two structural different systems coming there too, which is why you can see that some of those walls are like the different thicknesses. That's because those two systems coming together.
Anything can be done, it's that balance of, is that, do we want that classroom 4 foot bigger so bad that we're gonna spend,
And I think
$200,000
we'll find that out when the bids come back for those alternates. If, it's gonna be $5 million to do the alternates, but we could build another wing for 7, build the other wing. I mean, we won't know that until those bids come back in.
Okay. Any other questions about the inside, materials, color, approach? Okay, we can probably move on to slide 14.
And the last portion for you guys, just to give you a general about our exterior design approach. You guys have probably seen this before. This is the same strategy that we used at the 5th grade, kind of taking, thoughts and ideas from your context around you and some of that regional history of the terracotta and kind of your existing brick material as well. On page 15 there, just one of the pictures from that 5th grade to remind you about how we started incorporating some of those items with the same brick material, just kind of modernizing it with that stack pattern, getting the linearity, vertically and horizontally with the windows and the cast fins. And then, as you know, we continued that kind of with that trellis, verticality, linearity above it. And then 16 is the approach that we will be proposing to take on the 3rd and 4th. So this is looking northwest. So this is the southeast corner of the building. So that corner there is that little resource room that you saw in one of the classrooms. As you can see, we're using the same brick, a lot of that ribbon window, and then some of those full height glass portions that was done in the 5th grade. That was at your collaboration space, and then also the full height at your exits, those 2 exits in the 5th grade. So we're doing the same thing here. If you go to page 17, you're kind of just walking around the corner. So now you're looking to the southwest. This is the northeast corner. You can see how we're using those same windows on those north classrooms there. And then you can start to see a little bit on the east side there, the full height glass at that exit point. And then way in the back there, you can see our trellis that captures that library door as well. If you move on to page 18, just kind of zooming in there, again, we're putting that as an optional alternate. So the patio, is required for the exiting from those doors, but the trellis would be an alternate bid item, bid separately from the base package.
Since we've done this facade before, could you maybe please ask ICI what the cost per square foot of this facade is versus what maybe a traditional one would be?
We did ask that question on the 5th grade edition, and that cost was virtually identical to the standard brick that we've done in the past and other parts of the building. Wasn't that much difference in cost.
I don't believe that at all. If you have full height curtain wall, you have, 30 windows, when you get 20, there's bigger. No brick fins, you just do brick walls, no fins. It looks great, don't get me wrong, it just,
Does the current green have those fins?
Yes.
Is there a functional purpose to those, or are they purely decorative?
So they do add some shading, and then I think it visually for the windows, they were saying it helps kind of break up that visuality across, but, we tend to, as designers, lean on, having more windows, just because the studies have shown the more access and view that they have to the outside, learning productivity goes up, so that's just the way that we did it, but we understand that a whole wall of windows without that breakup can be a lot for kids, so that was kind of the design approach behind it.
This is the time if you want something changed.
I don't want to
Absolutely.
change, it's not my call, I'm just saying that's an expensive facade, but we've
I
already
would
built
like
that,
to
so.
see an option.
We're skipping
of
them now.
less costly.
We're skipping
I
them
think
out.
too,
We've left
ICI
that out.
can give us line item
Took that out just for
type
you.
pricing, yeah. ICI can provide us with, line item type pricing for these parts and pieces too. So they have, they have our current 50% set, and they're working on getting all the pricing for that really soon.
Because even
I
with
think
more
honestly,
windows, doesn't like your utilities go up, like heat and cooling? And, like some people would have a little bit of concern about too many windows with security and being in the open field, and so trying to maybe balance that out. Because like I'm looking at this one corner, I don't know what corner this is, I think that's the.
Southwest.
Southwest. But that's like a lot of windows, and like a lot of times people are like, And then I knew when we had the fins, right, at the beginning, the windows didn't open, and so that was like, got fixed, but it was still like, is it too tight for safety purposes, like, is it for if we had to escape that way or whatever, but I'm balanced. Like, I like the look, but I wonder, we had some reservations after it was all done, that simplicity would be better, we're trying to be more, we wanna get more for our money by doing other things that maybe, the color of the brick is good enough, of course, so it looks nice, but also.
Well, we want it to be cohesive and have the same aesthetic as the other, addition. I wouldn't mind just seeing some line item pricing on a couple of those things, but if we already did it in the 5th grade, then I understand, wanting it to look cohesive.
Part of the approach to the full curtain glass too at those connections of the building is getting a 1-for-1 brick match is difficult. Yes, I understand that this aesthetic does point to an addition, but we also try to avoid mismatching brick like right next to each other. Again, that's a, personal opinion on terms of, yes, that this is addition, it's an updated architecture feature, but when we do just a regular brick building next to an old brick building, it, you can tell that it's an addition, that you almost were trying to match so close that it's like, oh, they missed the bar. Again, that's a personal aesthetic feel, and that might not bother you, just kind of some insight on our design approach behind that.
well, if we continue down the path, of flipping the school one day, you get the aesthetic benefit of the 5th grade in this way, right? 'Cause now you can see it.
Now you
going
see
into-
it,
Yeah. Now we don't, now it's the back of
Now
the
we
school,
don't
but
really see it,
the intention was one day of maybe in front of the school.
That's coming more to fruition with the road from Valley View
Yes,
on
that's
this
the
project.
other, that's the other portion of it too. With the new road, there will be more eyes on this addition, so.
But is that not for just buses?
No, that's actual future parking. There's that. No, it would have been.
Is that
for
gonna be
the
alternate to
offices.
this bid package?
That is gonna be,
Yeah, is it?
No,
That's
Yeah.
not.
that's part of the package. We need that access road in order to get back here to do this work. I don't wanna run them through our parking lot. I can't get them through with the mobile classrooms in the back for transportation. I can't get them through to the site.
So can we talk about that then? Like, what does that include? Is that, again, is that just for buses?
Initially, we have a parking lot out there that's designed to move the buses from their current location out there. And then, yes, we'll be using that for all the bus drop-offs as well, but it has a long enough drive that we believe, rent all the parent pickups out there as well to follow the buses. And there is a design, it's on, one of the early pages that shows the future parking lot, if we decide to expand the parking out there as well.
yeah,
But part of the bid package now is just.
The road, the access. road.
yeah, just the
And
gray road.
those spots in the
shown.
middle for buses? or those-
Correct, that's where the buses are gonna park.
All of it.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, don't we have to have like IDOT approval for the Valley View expansion? Or
Yes.
like access from Valley View?
Yeah, and our civil team is working on doing that permitting as well, but yes, you are correct, it is a separate IDOT permitting for that. And it's the access and the curb cut essentially for it.
So like, I've heard it doesn't go super fast or anything like that, or come on, like.
Our civil team is in talks with them, but,
For Valley View?
yeah, for Valley View,
I
it's
would think that would
required.
fall under a local jurisdiction.
So the detention is engaged with 176, and that is definitely IDOT territory, which we're going to be submitting for. There will be some discussions about Valley View with the village and maybe not quite sure.
Yes,
That road changes jurisdictions as you go down the road.
yeah,
Well, it's like Oakwood Hills is right there.
Oakwood Hills has part of it, yes, Prairie Grove has part of it, and I believe Nunda has a portion of it as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Well, can you give me, help me understand more of this whole IDOT process, because like you're wanting to do something, but then if they don't do it in a timely fashion, like typically, what is your experience of how long does it take you to go through some process like this with them?
Yeah, it's difficult to put a time frame on that because there's so much variability from one project to another. So, and not being a civil engineer, I don't have the specific personal experience with it, but we know that it can take some time. And so we're submitting this in, late October, which, because you have to work out all the grades and everything else to detail for their particular specifications that they want to see. So there's exacting expectations on that side of what they want to see, and so we're in the process of putting all those things together. And as far as a timeline, it's very difficult for me to really give you that.
So in ballpark terms, best case scenario, this project goes to bid or awards the bids, project starts in March. We need
It
a
starts in
cut,
March, the road
has to start
first to
first.
start either first or we find an alternate way to handle it. We don't know yet, but we're doing everything we can to get it to start.
So it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years, I mean, like, it's IDOT, it's not.
I don't think 2 years, I don't think a year, but, it could be 4 months easily,
So you have to go to IDOT because you're cutting in a new, road into Valley View?
Again,
potentially,
potentially the value, but I got it really more focused on the detention and the relationship to 176. So
Yeah, but isn't there a water reclamation district that?
there's
would handle that?
county, there's like at least 2 different agencies that require their own submittals for that. So our civil engineers are preparing 2 separate submittals for that. because that's just the way it makes most sense to do that, so.
And is that the work, that's the plan that they can done this summer?
That's different, that's a septic.
That's the new septic to run.
Yeah, what's the status of
Because
it?
like 1965 field, and then we are, had this proposed addition that we want to do. We need this to be kind of fixed in order to, it didn't happen last year, so like, what's the status?
So we have gone through a number of reviews with the McHenry County reviewer. They have had specific requirements for resubmittal, like informational requirements. The most recent comments were related to the multiple parcels on site, and the school district's consolidation process is moving toward resolving that, so they will be satisfied hopefully very soon. Because in their mind, there has to be this documentation up to their standards, so it's very clear that there will be no parceling of the site in one way. There's also specific questions about, they want backup from a well location standpoint, and well and water line, existing wells, things like that, so a well contractor will need to go out and actually survey some things, because they won't take the engineer's dimensions at face value. They want, they want the specific well contractor to locate those things. Of course, that requires some access to some privately occupied spaces, so there's a time factor with being able to get in there to do that verification. We think that these are the last two items that should resolve that and allow us to attain that.
Because weren't we supposed to do the connection last summer for those septic? And we didn't get our permit in time, we didn't get a permit, so it's like, it makes me nervous, because these are two things that can kind of like hinge on everything else happening, and it's like, kind of want to really know what's going on here, because even last year, right, I thought we were gonna do this connection to the septic field, and then we had plans for it, and then paperwork didn't get submitted or something and something.
Now, there was complications with there were a number of factors, but one of them was how detailed you have to be with the future septic area that you have to design for, even though it's not necessarily going to be primarily used. That's part of the whole overall site design. And so there were some things that we had to catch up with the reviewer requirements about. And not being here last summer, all of it, I know we've been about 4 or 5 months, I can't speak to the whole history of the project, however, that's what I know.
So then, what do you think our prediction of getting this permit timeframe wise is?
For the septic permit, I think that we're very close.
So the next couple months, or next 6 months,
I
3
would hope it'd
months?
be much less than that. Yeah, I mean, the consolidation, my understanding is the consolidation has actually moved up on the county recorders.
That was paperwork we did last month at the board level to consolidate those. Our attorney submitted that paperwork the next day to the county with assurance from the county that would be looked at expeditiously. A month later, we're waiting.
Right. But I didn't know, the well component is new to me. I
That's
mean, is that contingent on weather? Are we like trying to beat cold weather before those wells can be assessed, or?
And you said
No, I don't
something
think
about
so.
the
Okay.
No,
That's on the farm site.
Oh, it is on our land.
It's our land.
Oh, I thought you had said it was.
private.
He's saying
well,
private.
it's a school district's land, they decide.
So we need this from the county to happen.
Mhm.
We need the well thing to happen. What,
Which is a lot easier to control. The school district has a well contractor.
yeah, I don't. And so those two things, along with what else needs to happen, and some new redrawings, something need to be submitted.
Resubmittal associated with the request that is related to those things.
Can we get us update at next meeting about like, I mean, these are things that we need to make.
Absolutely.
Of both things, the septic and, I mean, if you can get maybe just estimated from your civil engineers and pass it on to that to be you about like, hey, for a project this size, working with IDOT, this is the possibility of a time frame that it usually takes this long, and if we can even get more confirmation about like that road access, who really we have to check through, because we were supposing maybe the IDOT, maybe Village of Prairie, maybe Oakwood Hills, maybe not them. Let's figure out who those are and then kind of get that.
Yeah, our civil engineer knows, I don't.
Right, so now I know, that's fine, it's just next
Just-
month, I would like to know.
And we're gonna meet with Dr. Beat every week to talk about all these things that are always moving parts, so.
Yeah.
There will be updates.
Any other questions? I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
May I have a motion to adopt the 2023-24 budget?
So moved.
Discussion. Any further questions on the budget based on our previous discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote please.
Stephanie Howard,
Yes.
Jennifer Regola.
Yes.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gwen Violet,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw.
Yes.
Motion carried.
May I have a motion to approve the first reading of board policy 7:60, additions, deletions, and changes?
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
This had to do with what? The moving of the date.
Correct?
Yeah.
November to January.
Yeah.
Any questions? All in favor say aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have a motion to hold a special board meeting on October 14th at 8:30 a.m. in the junior high cafeteria?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? This special board meeting is with the IASB,
Correct, with Laura.
with Laura Martinez to help the board work on,
Strategic planning and goals.
perfect. So, and how long will it last? You don't know, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes regular minutes from the August 15th, 2023 bills payable, treasurer's report, Public Act 96-0434, 96-0266, and 97-0609.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote please.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gwen Violet,
Yes.
Stephanie Howard,
Yes.
Jennifer Regola.
Yes.
Michelle Shaw.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve resolution 2023-20 for evidence-based funding allocation?
Second.
Discussion, Dr. Butte?
This is an allocation we do every year. In years past, we split money between this fund and Fund 60, and now that we're using alternate revenue sources. We're only putting money in 10. And again, that be a resolution later in the year to pay that note off for this year's payment, using those funds in February. Motion will probably be in January to February.
Any questions? Roll call vote please.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gwen Violet,
Yes.
Stephanie Howard,
Yes.
Jennifer Regola,
Yes.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the PGTA MOU?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. This is for those extra duties.
Conversations that we had in the spring about issues with our technology and trying to streamline the process of some of the extra duties that are on an hourly basis. So we met with the PGT leadership, we picked 2 of them to pilot. We are piloting now, this MOU allows us to do the pilot, taking away the punch in and punch out on the time clocks and making it just a stipend for the year based on how much they would have been paid on an hourly basis.
So it costs the same.
It's a cost the same,
Okay.
it's the same cost.
When will these payments be made?
They get paid every payroll.
So it's a split.
It's split, over 26 days.
And if they don't want to do that duty, then someone else can take on that duty.
If they resign from that duty, yes, somebody else will pick it up, we'll post for it. If they're absent on particular days, it's their responsibility to make sure they get a substitute and to pay
discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote please. Gwen Violet,
Yes.
Stephanie Howard,
Yes.
Jennifer Regola,
Yes.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw,
Yes.
motion carried.
So before you go to 9.4, PGDSP asked to table this one for tonight. They're not quite ready to sign off.
Okay,
Just a motion to table.
may I have a motion to table the approval of PGSP FOU?
Second? Is it a yes or no?
Yes or no, or is it?
It's a yes, and then you'll vote to table.
Okay, so yes.
So, and then I guess do I have to do all in favor or do I do roll?
You vote slow.
All in favor of tabling this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried to table it. May I have a motion to approve the HVAC pre-purchase through Omnia Partners OPUS? So,
Second.
discussion.
So in similar fashion to our project on the 5th grade wing, we are going to pre-purchase the rooftop unit for the new addition. If you recall last time, we had a super long lead time on that unit. So we pre-purchased it prior to the bids going out, and it still was tight on getting here.
Yeah.
This is a different, it's not a multi-zone unit. This is it's a different style of heating and cooling system. So it doesn't have quite a long lead time, but it's still something we wanted to get on the books and get pre-purchased. When you pre-purchase it, they put it at the top of the manufacturing line. You do it on a purchase order. It goes into the queue, and we may or may not get it in time for next summer. So we do need the authorization to do that. We're going through the purchasing co-op, which allows us to get away from the having to go out for bids with it. A couple years ago, it was during the pandemic time when they were short on supplies. We were able to do a resolution at that time to go up outside the parameters of bidding. Here, we're going through a co-op to get around those parameters.
And this is just for that extra wing.
For the addition, correct. The blue, those in the blue in the presentation. It's almost a year if we don't pre-purchase it.
Do any electrical gear things to be purchased?
We do. That currently is on the market for bids right now, for electrical gear. That's also in that same memo. I put a little blurb about that. Switch gear that we need is a year out.
I was gonna say, it's like 54 weeks.
Yeah, it's 52 to 70 weeks. So right now we're proposing a custom switch gear, which we believe there's some folks that manufacture that a lot quicker for us than us waiting for off-the-shelf Square D or an Eaton brand. I had a conversation with a couple folks at ICI about this, and I don't know if White's done one of these pre-purchase for switch gear or not, but this is how we'll be able to get it there and get here on time. It's an 800 amp service that's going to feed this new addition, and we absolutely have it. We can't power it without it, so it's on the streets now for bids.
Yeah, I split the metering out of one, but it still was 24 weeks. But it was half a year versus a year.
Versus a year, yes, I can't do it a year. That won't work.
So this HVAC system, then is it a different company that would service compared to our other ones, like when they keep in maintenance? I thought we talked about something before.
We did. So the first year, usually under the warranty, whoever the manufacturer's rep is covers it under the warranty. Once the warranty ends, we'll put it on our contract with our current vendor.
They service systems.
It's a rooftop unit. It's the same principles. It's just a different manufacturing brand.
What determines if we have to go through that open bid process or that co-op route?
You have to always bid it unless you go through a cooperative purchasing. They've already bargained the contracts.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'd have to bid it.
Okay.
This is sized for all the,
It's sized for the additional space.
for 8 classrooms.
Yes.
And whatever else. Any other questions?
Zoning, you said it's not a zone system.
It's not a multi-zone system.
Okay, so what was the decision with that versus, you said there's a zone system in the 5th grade wing. How was that decision?
The other rooftop units in there were also on that we're multi-zone. So since they were all going to run off the same computer, we went with the same style of system. This is on a different side of the building. building system for the head end of it.
I think you'll have multiple thermostats. Right?
I'm sure, I'm not
It just
an
doesn't,
HVAC person.
it doesn't, yeah, the ones on these buildings are unique. It like actually conditions the air up at the unit to the exact temperature before sending to the room. For most units, condition it to 55 degrees, push it close to the room, and a box in the ceiling takes it from there. To kind of make it as simple of an explanation as I can.
Any other questions? Roll call vote, please. Stephanie Hausch,
Yes.
Jennifer Regola,
Yes.
Steve Sebastian,
Yes.
Josie Shattuck,
Yes.
Gwen Violet,
Yes.
Michelle Shaw.
Yes.
Motion carried. We need to do public participation, so can I check with them?
Yes, please.
We
Oh, I
we
know.
right into the,
I got it, yeah, I got it. Plus.
we can do it now.
Pledge of allegiance, okay. Members of the audience are encouraged to make comments and ask questions of the board consistent with board policy 2.230. Please identify yourself and make your presentation in 3 minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on to, we have a motion to go into executive session at 8:21 p.m. for the consideration of matters related to the purchase or lease of a real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired by ILCS 122C5 and the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the public body by ILCS 122C6.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. So we're gonna go into.
We'll go to the conference room.
We'll go to the conference room. And then we'll come back and there will be no other things.
Other than adjourn.
Thank you.